has so far led us to the theory that Flight 93 was shot down by the US Air Force and that a missile hit the Pentagon while Flight 77 crashed into the sea. So that leaves New York. But millions of people watched as the second hijacked plane crashed into the Twin Towers live on TV. So surely there can't be any doubt as to what happened there. Wrong.
Well, wrong for those who believe there's been a gigantic cover-up. They question how two planes managed to hit the Twin Towers in the first place. Skeptics say it would have been impossible for Arab hijackers given only rudimentary training on very small aircraft to perform such a feat. Steering a jetliner would be an entirely different proposition.
Are we to conclude that a few Saudis who were trained badly at small airports in the United States to fly very small planes were able to execute these dazzling maneuvers right on schedule? I don't think so. I don't think that was the case at all.
Fighter pilots and others and commercial airline pilots have looked at the maneuvers that these jets pulled, and they said that we couldn't even do that. I mean, they have to have special transponders and flight paths just for an experienced pilot to be able to land properly at a major airport, much less perfectly T-boning two buildings. I've interviewed many fighter pilots and commercial air pilots, and they said they couldn't do that maneuver. Only fly-by-wire can do something that sophisticated. We've all seen the video of cruise missiles going down chimneys, cruise missiles going through windows. Only something by remote control can fly with that much precision.
In this case, it could be used to actually direct a hijacked plane into a building without the need for any hijackers to be on board.
For some, it's not about who or what hit the Twin Towers. The dramatic collapse of the buildings an hour after the collisions fuels speculation that the planes alone could not have brought the buildings down.
Yes, they could have twisted the structures at the top. Yes, there could have been a certain amount of melting of the steel structures. We saw that most of the fuel was exploded out in the air. You had to have another element, and that other element would be explosions preset inside the towers at key points to bring the whole thing down.
What makes me suspicious about the collapse? It was almost a free fall. There was no resistance all the way down. They fell in one continuous piece. Whereas had the planes caused some structural failure in a certain spot, there would have been varying resistances on the way down.
It was like straight down. That simply does not happen. That's not the way it is. You're looking at a demolition, and that is carried out by other means.
Many of these theories about 9/11 are encouraged by amateur video pictures of George Bush visiting a school in Florida on the morning of the attacks. Theorists believe that this provides proof that the President of the United States knew about the attacks before they happened. An advisor is seen telling the President about the second collision. What makes some suspicious is how the President reacts to the news of the biggest terrorist atrocity in American history.
They know now that two planes have hit the North and South Tower in downtown Manhattan, and he still sits there for another 7 minutes reading the little goat story.
Get ready.
A girl had a pet goat.
Go on.
She liked to go running with her pet goat.
Go on.
She played with her goat.
Try it again. Get ready from the beginning of that.
To me, he almost looks robotic, certainly unmoved. Other people say he went into shock. I don't think so. He didn't look like that to me. He didn't look terribly upset. You can explain it one of two ways. Either he had foreknowledge that this was going to happen, or his mind was in such a state of, you might say, collapse, that he just simply didn't react.
The administration's explanation is that he didn't want to panic America and that he wanted to remain calm. There are ways to get out of that and to act presidential rather than reading a book about goats to children while the worst disaster in American history is occurring.
So, the serial skeptic who just won't buy the official line finds the deeper you dig, the more murky water you fling up, leading to ever more extreme theories, like bin Laden having nothing to do with any of it. But then you come across some intriguing facts which make you stop and think, like the fact that the Twin Towers were only insured against terrorist attack a few short months before, leading to a multi-billion-dollar payout. And if that's not suspicious enough for you, wait and see what we got for you in part 2. 9/11 is at the centre of America's greatest conspiracy theories since the assassination of JFK. Now, if you've got a country of 280 million people, all of whom enjoy freedom of speech, then that's a lot of questioning minds. But a secretive government obviously means that some people won't get the answers they're looking for, and conspiracy theories will spring up all over the shop. But suspicion, finger-pointing and accusations are nothing new.
For instance, there have been previous accusations of the US military targeting American civilian planes, like this TWA plane which crashed into the sea near Long Island in July 1996. All 230 people on board were killed. American military exercises were being carried out nearby. This aroused suspicions about what could have happened. Back in Texas, radio host Alex Jones has been looking into the tragedy. He claims the government is hiding the truth.
TWA Flight 800 was clearly shot down. There were military maneuvers going on that night off the coast of New York, and over 200 military officers have been on the record as saying they saw 2 distinct missile trails go up and hit the aircraft.
After 4 years of investigations, aviation officials declared that the explosion was caused by a short-circuit fuse which blew up the fuel tank.
When the wreckage was reconstructed, the few photos that they released show that it had giant holes blown in it. It was not the fuel tank.
John Whalen has spent the last 10 years writing about America's biggest conspiracies. He believes that what happened that night is open to question, but that it's not necessarily a sinister conspiracy.
I think that's one of the problems with a lot of conspiracy theories, is when the government does a horrible job of investigating and doesn't pursue all avenues, the theories will linger. And I think what we have there is a mystery that hasn't been solved.
Other similarities are drawn between 9/11 and another terrorist outrage, the Oklahoma bombing. This time the issue is the possibility of pre-planted explosives. On the 19th of April 1995, right-wing extremists blew up the Murrah Federal Building using a car bomb. The blast killed 168 people. Former soldier Timothy McVeigh was convicted and executed for the crime, but some say the car bomb alone couldn't have caused such extreme damage.
There's no way that the supposed explanation as to what happened there in the Murrah building, a truck bomb outside the building, could have caused that building to explode 500 feet outward. You know, if it was a truck bomb going into it, the building would have exploded inward, right?
A whole part of that building in Oklahoma City came straight down, just as with the World Trade Towers, and for the same reason. There were charges placed on the columns in the buildings. That's the only way that you can get a demolition like that to happen.
But who could or would have placed the explosives? Many of our serial skeptics claim the government was involved in this one too. Why? The theory goes that they wanted to stir up a climate of fear to justify a law and order crackdown. Once again, government secrecy has fueled those suspicions.
There were other suspects who were never tracked down. The government so circumscribed its legal case against Timothy McVeigh to win the case that it never looked at these other issues, and I think those issues remain open, and who assisted in this is a big question.
So the theorists are claiming that the American government covered up the shooting down of a passenger plane and staged the Oklahoma bombings as a means of bringing in tougher law and order. It just goes to show how far government secrecy can go. But does it really have something to hide? Anyone might start thinking that the attacks on Pearl Harbor were pre-planned too. Well, the theorists do.
On the 7th of December 1941, when Franklin Roosevelt was president, Japanese aircraft attacked the US Pacific Fleet in Pearl Harbor. drawing America into the war. But did the then government know in advance that this attack was going to happen? Was there a hidden agenda?
There's emerging historical evidence in the documentary record now that they had quite a bit of advance and specific warning of the attack on Pearl Harbor, and that there was a decision somewhere near the top to go ahead and let the attack come because it would give the impetus to get the United States into the war.
But they didn't make preparations at Pearl Harbor for that attack, and I believe that's because they wanted the war, because we were in a depression, and that was the only way they saw to get out of that depression.
We will gain the inevitable triumph